All right, to say we are beginning tonight in Meretz Hashem on Berachos Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph 51a, and we are picking up at the second wide line in Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Rabbi Shmuel Elisha said as follows: Shlosh Dvarim Sachli Suriyal Sarapnim. So Suriyal, literally again, Sarapnim means the one of the important angels. The Rashbam says of here, Malach Chashuv Lo'Volav Mi'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He's an important angel who's able to have access to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He's able to get in before the Ribbon Shalom. I guess the Malachim, there are different levels and different grades. Some Malachim have more access, some Malachim have less access. So this surreal is called Sar Hapnim. And what did he say? Al titol chalukcha b'shachris miyad hashamish v'til bash. It's incredible. So what did surreal? This inner this Malach of the inner circle of the Ribbon Shalom, what did he tell Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha? He said, number one, in the morning when you get dressed, don't take your tunic from the hand of the shamish, from the hand of like your servant, right? Rather, again, what should you do? So Rashi points out over here, Shachris miyad hashamish ela ata ba'atzmecha talehu mimakom shu sham v'tol. You should take your own tunic wherever it's hanging, and you should put it on yourself. So I guess the imagery is like this: a person has a servant, so the servant comes, hands you your clothing. So Surreal said to Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, when you get dressed in the morning, don't take your clothing from the butler, from the servant, but rather take your clothing yourself. Okay, and do not take anything from someone who has not washed his hands. So Pashtus is also referring to the morning, that if someone hasn't washed Netilas Yadayim, Migalvaser, don't take something from them. And do not give back a cup of asparagus. Remember again, asparagus is that dish we spoke about before in last week's daf. You could have wine asparagus, beer asparagus. If you're going to return, in other words, I guess if you drank a cup of asparagus and then you're going to give it back, only give it back to the person who gave it to you. And Rashi says over here, Shem Chaburah Shedim. Apparently there's some group of demons that hang around the asparagus. So Amrilei Istalognis, or others say again, it's not the group of Shadin called Tachsofis, but rather Istalognis. Istalognis Shal Maloche Chavala Matzbeno LaAdam VaOmrim Emasai Yavo Adam Liyadi Liyadei Echa Me'advarim Halalu V'Yilkod. Because apparently there's this group of destructive angels, and they wait around waiting, wondering when is a person going to do one of these three things, again as we just mentioned, and if so, he makes himself susceptible to danger. So what's interesting is as follows. Think about these three things. So the last one, about returning the cup of asparagus to the person who gave it to you. So the Pashtos, that seems to be a little bit more like in the shade realm. So things that exist in the demon realm generally defy our comprehension. What's the pshat of the first two? About not taking your clothing from your servant, rather taking it yourself. And number two, don't take something from someone who hasn't washed their hands. And I think perhaps the Gemara, or what Surreal is trying to teach Rabbi Shmuel, is the following: that one of the most important things in life is to be self-sufficient, to be able to stand on one's own 2 feet. Now, of course, there are times in life when we have to reach out for help, and times in life when we need assistance, that's for sure. But B'derech Klal, as a general sense, a person is really supposed to strive to be self-sufficient. So perhaps what Surreal was saying, Rabbi Shmuel, was like this: don't start off your morning with a handout. Don't start off your morning with someone giving something to you, but rather against, you know how you start the day? Whatever you need, go and make it happen. Whatever you need, you go and get it. Don't wait for the servant to hand you the clothing. You take the clothing. So begin the day ultimately again with almost like the midah, with the attribute, the character trait of self-sufficiency. Be a go-getter. Begin the day by saying, if I want something to happen, I'm going to make it happen. What does it mean? Don't take something from someone who hasn't washed their hands. So I think really over here what Cyril is trying to highlight over here is also be careful who you get assistance from. In those times when you do need assistance, because we always need assistance, be careful who you are accepting the help from. Make sure that it comes from a place where the person who's giving you the help has good intentions. Make sure, again, that the source of the chesed being performed for you is truly holy and not some other self-serving motivation. Don't accept help from someone who hasn't washed their hands, meaning make sure that when you accept help, because in life we all have to accept help, that it comes from a good source. Next. Good. Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi said as follows: Shlosha dvarim sachli malach hamaves. The malach hamaves told me 3 things. So pretty incredible. Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi had a conversation with the malach hamaves. What did he say? Number 1, atitol chalukcha shachris min hashamish. So this is very tilbash. So this is very interesting. So the malach hamaves echoed the same advice as Surreal. When you get dressed in the morning, don't take the clothing from the shamish, don't take the clothing from the servant, rather take it yourself. Next, a piece of advice number 2 is the same as well. Do not take something from someone who has not washed their hands. And lastly, so this is incredible. Do not go ahead and literally stand in front of women at a time when they are going ahead and returning from a funeral. Why? Because the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, said, because I'm literally dancing there and coming in front of them, and my sword is in my hand, and I have the ability to go ahead and harm anyone in my way. Okay, so what happens if one runs into a group of women coming back from a levaya? What should one do? Jump 4 amos out of the way. If there's a river, cross it. And if there's another pathway to take it. And if there's a wall, go and hide behind it. What if there's none of these things? What if you can't get out of the way? You can't jump Daled Amos. There's no wall, there's no bridge, there's no river. What should you do? Turn away, turn around. Turn the opposite way. Then recite the pasuk. Chaburah who said to the Satan, Yiga Hashem B'cha Satan, Chaburah who has control over the Satan until the group of women passes by. So what's the pshat with this? What's the pshat? That the Satan is by a group of women returning from a levaya? What's the pshat? So perhaps, there are times in life when we think that we are unsusceptible to sin. Right? We all have, sometimes we read a passage to a certain prohibition. We're like, I would never do that, right? I have absolutely no desire to ever do that. And we sometimes think, erroneously, that we are impervious to certain desires and certain wants. And then certainly when one is at a levaya, one would assume that a person would, given that they're literally dealing with death, staring death in the face, that a person would not go ahead and necessarily be tempted by sin. Yet the Gemara says that even by a levaya, a man could be tempted by immoral thoughts. Lest you think that there's ever a time in life where a man is impervious to immoral thoughts, where a man doesn't become desirous of a group of women. Again, a person is a person, human being is human being, a Yitzhahara is Yitzhahara, and even at levaya, there's still the desires, there's still the Yitzhahara. Therefore, again, the Gemara says, be careful, because even if there's a group of women by a levaya, the Satan is still there, meaning temptation is still present. I think ultimately the Malach HaMavet is telling Rabbi Shmuel Silber that the best way to live life is that a person should always realize their own fragility, their own frailty, their own susceptibility and temptation to sin. Incredible. Let's go weiter. There were 10 halachas, or 10 concepts said by Kosher Bracha. Kosher Bracha is like a cup that you use, Rashi says it, for Berachos, for benching. So you're benching over a cup of wine, 10 halachas said about that cup. Number 1, Ton Hadachu Shtifa, it requires rinsing. Now we're going to see Hadacha and Shtifa both mean rinsing. We're going to see how they're different. Chai, you have to use pure wine. Chai usually means undiluted, but not in this context. Pure wine. Umale, the cup has to be full. Itur, it has to be crowned. Again, we'll discuss that. Ituf, one should be covered. Not lo b'shtei yadav, you pick up the cup with 2 hands. V'nosno biyamin, and then you hand it over. You pick it up with 2 hands, but ultimately hold it in the right hand. Umagbil min hakarka tefach, lift up the cup from the table or from the ground, wherever you're situated, 1 tefach, which is about 3 inches. V'nosin ein of bo, one should be looking at the cup through the duration of benching. V'yesh omrim, others say, af meshagra b'matana la'anshe beso, that you should even send the cup as a gift to the other members of your house. Now, anshe beso in this context usually means, Rashi says, ishto, to one's wife. That after one drinks from the kosher bracha, one should share it with one wife. So let's analyze these halachos. Rabbi Yochanan, anu elanu ela arba bilbad. So Rabbi Yochanan says the truth is we really only have 4 of these concepts. What are the 4 that we have? Hadacha, shtifa, chai, umale. So let's analyze. Tano, hadacha, what's hadacha? Mibifnim. That means before you use the cup for benching, one should wash it out on the inside. Ushtifa miwachutz. And shtifa means one should wash it the outside of the cup. Or so one should wash the inside and the outside of the cup. Rabbi Yochanan, kol mavarech al kol smali, nos nilo nachala b'li mitzrayim. This is beautiful. Whoever benches on a full cup, he is given literally again a portion without boundaries in the world to come. Shne'emar Omali Berachos Hashem Yam Vidaram Yarsha. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Omer Zocha V'Nochal Shnei Olam. Right, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says a person who benches with an overflowing cup ultimately inherits two worlds: Ha'olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, the world to come, this world and the world to come. Now, what's the pshat? That benching with an overflowed kos brings with it such incredible blessing. You know, when a person takes their wine, it would be easy for a person to say, you know what, when I'm drinking my wine, I want to enjoy it. If I'm using it for a mitzvah, perhaps I'll be a little bit more stingy, or I'll be a little bit more exact with how much wine I'm actually going to use. So a person who goes ahead and overflows the cup, right, or uses a full cup, shows that he's using his gashmius, his material wealth, for something ruchni, for something spiritual. And that is the ultimate tachlis, the ultimate purpose of man in this world. Itur, what's Itur? Rabbi Yehuda Matre b'Talmidim. Rabbi Yehuda, when he would bench, he would surround himself with his students. So that's like the crowning. It's actually very beautiful that the crown of the Rebbe is with his students. Rav Chisda ma'atlei benatli. Rav Chisda would go ahead and surround the large kos that he used for Birkas and Mazon for benching with a series of smaller koses. Amrab Chanan ubechai, and all of this is with chai. Now chai, of course, means pure wine. Amrav Sheshes ubebirkas haaretz or birkas haaretz. And when we speak about this idea dafka of like surrounding the cups with other smaller cups, this is in Berachos Haaretz. That's the bracha in Berachos Hamazon that talks about the beauty and bounty of Eretz Yisrael. So especially when talking about the beauty and bounty of Eretz Yisrael, one should have a lot of wine. So again, you have the cup that you're mentioning on, you surround it with other cups of wine, showing the bounty of Eretz Yisrael. Ituf, what's ituf? Wrapping. Rav Papa ma'atef v'yosef. Rav Papa would go ahead and wrap himself. He would wrap himself when he would go ahead and, in his, the Rashi says, Rabbi Taliso, in his talis, he would wrap himself when he was benched. Rabbi Asi paris suja al reshe. Rav Asi would put his cloak over his head. So this, the idea over here is whether it's with the talis, putting cloak over the head, the idea is that it represents a deferential posture during Berachos Hamazon. Note lo b'shtei yadav, you pick up the kos with two hands. Amar Rav Chanina bar Papa, Mikra, what's the pasuk? Su'u yedechem kodesh ubarchu es Hashem. That literally, again, let your hands lift up kodesh, something holy. So hands plural, both hands pick up the kos, and then v'nosno liyamin, you hand it over into your right hand. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rishonim sha'alu, small mouth to say al yamin. So even though you're going to hold the cup in your right hand, can you use your left hand to support the cup as well? Amar Rav Ashi, ho'il v'rishonim ibaylu v'lo if shitulu. So Rav Ashi says, since the earlier generations asked this question, they never answered it. Both say Nun Alpha base 51b, Anan Na'avid L'chumra. Ultimately, again, we'll do l'chumra. What does it mean we'll do l'chumra? In other words, so we'll lift it in the right hand, and ultimately, again, not support it with the left hand. Incredible. Umag biyom akarka tefach, and he's supposed to lift it up from the ground, the tefach. What's the pasuk? Kos Yeshuas Esa Uv'Shem Hashem Ekra. So literally, again, a cup of salvation I will lift up. So you lift up the kos. The nosen ein avo. You should keep your eyes on the cup. Ki hechi delo nisach daite minei. So that you shouldn't have a lapse of awareness about the cup. Meshagala anshe beisov matana. And you should go ahead and send it to the members of your household with a matana. Ki hechi de tisbarach. In order that the other members of your the hechi de tisbarach divisu. So dafka, again, one should make sure to share the kosher bracha with the other members of their household in order that the other members, specifically one's wife, benefits from the bracha. So we'll stop over here for today. We're going to pick up with a story about that tomorrow. Shkoyach, everyone.